and the good idea fairy is flying around, and some of the dust falls on me, and I look. I have to literally balance the risk versus reward. We're more connected via technology, but I think I would say residual effect of that is there's less social interaction amongst humans. Poorly managed physical security lets a bad actor in, you're done.
Welcome to the Top Cyber Pro podcast, the show where we bring experts in the cybersecurity industry to share their valuable knowledge, experience, tips, tools, techniques, and resources to help you become a top cyber pro. And now, here's your host for this episode, Terry Thompson. AI is emerging quickly, and it is not only affecting the cybersecurity industry, but potentially the workforce itself. And today we have cybersecurity expert and top cyber pro level 99 award winner, Jamil Miller, to discuss this and so much more. Jamil, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Terry. How are you?
Awesome. Every day is Monday. You know, we was just discussing this before the show here about how every day is Monday in the cybersecurity world. And all it takes is just one bad hair day. And I'm telling you, it's like, oh my goodness, every day is Monday.
It really is. I mean, things change so rapidly, and most of the time you're prepared, but you're still caught off guard. And then there's the things that you aren't prepared for. So I can definitely relate to the every day is Monday statement.
Yeah, and we're going to dive into some of that stuff here today, because I know that you have quite a wide variety of things that you're an expert at. And man, I look at some of those things, you know, especially the career map that's out there, and there's just a wide variety of things that is out there. But before we dive into that, I really want to dive into, how did you get started within the cybersecurity industry?
I've always been in IT. I've been a fan of IT since, I would like to say, high school, back when we were dealing with the Apple IIe and IIc, and when you would buy magazines and go through 10 pages back and front just to have a pixel go across your screen. And then in the middle of that pixel, it stops, and you have to go through all the code to realize what went wrong, which definitely pulled me out of any programming in my IT career, period. But I started off desktop support. I've done service desk. I've done IT for logistics. Finally, I saw an opportunity to go into cyber, and it was an exciting opportunity. And I've always been, I guess a better word to say is, never been afraid of taking a step that may be deemed as unpopular, because I was doing pretty good where I was, but decided to make this step and jumped into cyber, I mean, feet first. And let's be totally transparent. I was cocky. I felt that cyber's there. I can do it, no problem. I'll go in and become a rock star. And I can honestly say that cyber humbled me to a degree that I still smile about and think when I go back to the time, because there was a program that I was trying to get past, working on the Army side of things, and it had to go before a technical review board. And the irony was Jim was on that board, and Jim and I worked together for years as peers in different aspects while overseas. But Jim was a member of the board. I have other good friends of mine who are also in the cybersecurity space who are on the board. So the only rookie was myself. But I went in there, thought I had the world in my hand, said to myself, these are my friends. This is going to pass. I'm ready. Went with my presentation, passed my paperwork around. Let's just say it got treated like a poorly spelled college paper. My whole presentation was dissected, dismissed, and given back to me with so many literal red circles. What is this? Red circle, you need to explain that. And it didn't just humble me, it embarrassed me.
Mhm.
It brought me down to earth though, and I have to thank everybody who was a part of that process for that, because I probably wouldn't be where I am now if that would have went over as well, because I would have thought I was, quote, that guy, end quote. But
Mhm.
it made me sit back, it made me reevaluate everything that I thought I knew. It made me go back and speak to people who I knew had more knowledge than myself. And I literally shunned because I thought I knew all there was to know. So reach back is important. I was humbled. I spoke to them. I got the knowledge I needed. I revamped everything, including my thought process of cyber in general. And it's been a fun onward learning process since then.
Yeah, it's interesting because cockiness can often outweigh confidence, but man, when you have confidence is really where it's at right there. And there's many ways in which to gain confidence out there. Listening to your story and as you was going through that process, I remember when I was in the military. So I worked in IT for 24 years in the military. I can assure you that I allowed my 15-pound mouth to override my 5-pound behind many times out there. And it was one of those things I was like, yes, I'm telling you, 1 + 1 is 3, and you have to listen to me because I'm in charge, kind of a thing. And I used to do that. Oh my goodness. And, training and awareness is really often neglected. It really is. And I truly believe that there's a difference between training and awareness. And I know that once again, we're going to dive into this where we can anticipate certain things. And I think it comes down to training and awareness. What are your thoughts on training and awareness programs? And what's the best way that someone can really, educate themselves a little bit more and be more prepared?
Thanks. Education is key. You need to not only be trained so you know what you're doing, but the awareness comes in when the landscape, which always changes,
Mhm.
goes through another iteration.
Mm.
It can't be put in words how valuable the combination of those two are.
Mhm.
Train to the standard, but by all means, be flexible enough to understand that the standard changes.
Mhm.
Hence, one of the reasons that in cyber and IT in general, you're required to take continuing education courses
Mm.
because there is no one size fits all in cyber. There isn't.
Mm.
You think you know something and something else comes up to show you that what you knew yesterday is no longer valid.
Right.
And you have a choice.
Yeah.
Catch up.
And that landscape is ever changing all the time. I mean, we hear things. I'm paying attention to like what's going on out in the news, and I watch Twitter and I watch a lot of different things that are going on out there. Can we ever really stay ahead of a lot of the things that are going on out there, or is it just a matter of like, we need to be aware and we need to be prepared?
I'm not going to say stay ahead. I would definitely say keep pace
Mm.
at best.
Hmm.
Keep pace. Don't ever allow yourself to get left behind,
Hmm.
because if you get too far behind, you never catch up.
Yeah.
And we're dealing with that now. There was the arms race back in the 60s, and now we're out here in the cyber realm to where, I mean, if you think about it, when you first started in the military, there was no US Cyber Command.
Hmm.
I mean, cyber was a computer geek thing,
Hmm.
but now it's actually a combatant command. I mean, wars are fought, and cyber is now an active part of it. So you have to know that change will always be there. You just have to be ready to change, and awareness is key, because you need to know when the changes are coming, when there's a rumbling, or if you find something that leads you down another path. A lot of times follow it. It may take you where you need to go.
Mhm. Yeah, I remember those days. I joined almost 30 years ago when I started my military career. And oh my goodness, yeah, I think we had it. I think it was mobile subscriber equipment back then. And we had that and cables and phones. And somewhere along the way, we started getting computers. And I was like, ooh, what is this? Kind of a
Yeah.
thing. I didn't even have a computer yet. So it was one of those things that cyber and computer awareness. When I got my first computer, now don't get me wrong, I started off early. I did some coding in the 80s and did some things with computers when I was in school, but I just never could quite get a computer. And I think I got my very first computer like in 1999, 2000-ish. And I
Okay.
know that we had already had things prior to that. So really, I mean, if you look at it, cybersecurity and even computing is still relatively new to the average person. It really is. It's still new. It's still new.
Yeah, it actually is. And if you look at how new it is, yet how great of an impact it's had on society at large. I mean, we're at the point now where your voice, my voice, almost anybody's voice can be synthesized to say whatever that user of that technology wants you to say. And if you hear it yourself, you might smile and say, wow, that's me. It's
Mhm.
nothing short of amazing.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. I mean, I'm sure that I'm just like the average person. I mean, I have a lot more training and knowledge, skills, and experience than maybe the average person. But it's still one of the things to where there's a lot of availability that's out there. People are playing with things, tinkering things, and that's how I learned. I got my first computer, and I must have broke that thing about 1,000 times and put it back together and installed this operating system and that operating system. I was like, ooh, I want to try Windows. I want to try Linux. I want to try all these different things. So I basically learned by playing, learned by discovering. So let me ask you something. I know formal education is a thing, but do you consider yourself someone who is a tinkerer, so to speak? Like, I like tinkering with things and see how I can modify, tweak, change, break, rebuild. Are you one of those kind of guys?
What would I describe myself? When I was younger, definitely I would tinker with things.
Yeah.
Now I would say the older me, I tinker in a much more controlled space,
Hmm.
because now things that I may touch may affect an enterprise network. So when I'm at home, if I sandbox something, if it's something I'm interested in, oh, I'll go behind the wire and do whatever I want to do. But when it comes to decision making where it's enterprise wide, as much as I want to tinker with some things and I see something and the good idea fairy is flying around and some of the dust falls on me and I look, I have to literally um balance the risk versus reward.
Yeah.
And again, I got to thank cyber for that, because it actually makes me take a lot more risk-based approach on a
Mhm.
lot of things in my life in general. But definitely when it comes to tinkering with things, I'm very, I would say, controlled in that aspect.
Mhm. And that brings me to the point of data, because our data really, it's at risk. It is always at risk. Our data is at risk. And really there's, the one thing that you can do is anticipate vulnerability. You can assess it once an attack happens. I want to dive down into some of these things right here of anticipating vulnerability. How do you actually anticipate a vulnerability?
Um, I would say the closest we have to anticipating what I would call a vulnerability would be the zero trust architecture,
Mhm.
where data is labeled, data is classified, and no inherent trust is given,
Mhm.
to where before the way our cyber infrastructure was set up was that if you were, for example, outside of premises, you weren't trusted unless you used VPN. But if you were inside of premises or the perimeter or wherever you were working, trust was inherently given.
Mhm.
So with the zero trust architecture, there's no such thing as inherent trust. Everything is treated as such. You're verified again, and it's basically least privilege on steroids. So data classification plays a large role in that. Before, we've just had pools of data or data containerized in certain sections and segmented off. But now, as we go deeper into zero trust architecture, where we treat everything as if a breach has already occurred, everything, every asset, every user is verified and continually verified, and the data is labeled now. So now what you didn't consider important, you realize actually is important, and it's just one, and I'm not even going to call it it's a journey. We have to get there. So it's not going to happen overnight.
Well, I think it comes down to knowledge management. So not every organization has a knowledge management program. And I know, our organization, we're actually just now standing up a knowledge management program. So it's one of those things to where it comes down to training, education, and you hit on some very essential points right there of awareness, to where it's like, okay, you got classifications, you got labeling, you got storage, you got all these different things. And any hiccup along the way right there, by either, not even, I don't even want to use the word insider threat, but a person who's unaware potentially could be an insider threat as well too, because they're poorly trained, they don't know any better. So as we're transitioning data from like a shared drive, because that's language that we've kind of gotten used to over the years, now we're going to like a SharePoint and, Office 365, all these different things that are happening in the cloud, so to speak. And how do we really make that transition from an old school methodology of thinking into the future, which is the cloud?
I believe that a lot of this is going to be vendor driven, and this sounds bad, but it's true. It's profitable for a lot of the vendors to make their software platform based. So software as a service, and everything's being offered as a service now. And as the vendors put their products in the cloud, of course, the user base is going to have no choice, because even if you have a home server, if your servers and all of your architecture is on premises, your software is still cloud-based. So the two interact regardless. Microsoft 365 used to be what we had as Office loaded on all our machines. That's a prime example. Now we're getting networking that's becoming cloud-based. Everything's migrating to the cloud. So if you put it there, people will eventually come on board.
And, you talk about security of like physical systems versus systems that are in the cloud. Do you feel that it was more, the physical systems that we kind of came up with or grew up with was more easier to secure? Or do you feel that cloud security is more easier to secure?
That's a great question. I would definitely say that they both have their pros and their cons, because poorly managed physical security lets a bad actor in, you're done. They're already there where your systems are.
Yeah.
But in the cloud, poor security practices are poor security practices, whether they're physical security, whether they're poor cyber practices, whether they're poor configuration management, because a properly configured system has its own security. Misconfigured system, despite having every required patch on there, is vulnerable like an unlocked door.
Yeah. So when an attack happens, you always want to make sure that you have a plan in place, and and there's many frameworks and many ways in which to kind of do risk mitigation and so on and so forth. But when an attack actually happens, how do you go about assessing the damage of that attack and then the ongoing implications of that? Because you always have to make sure that you pay attention. How do you assess the damage after an attack?
In the legacy methods, I would say that your incident response plan was critical,
Mhm.
and you had to practice it.
Yeah.
You had to be ready so you don't have to get ready.
Mhm.
But now, as we move closer towards zero trust, and we treat everybody and everything as if a breach has already occurred, it's a lot easier to contain it, because as an individual, you only have access to certain things. There are no more God keys. There are no more, well, I'm going to say, in the perfect scenario, you don't have the way of laterally transversing a domain as easy as you used to before. If you had an admin key, or somebody's username and password, or if somebody's admin password was misconfigured, which used to happen more than I would like to speak on, you were in and the kingdom was yours. Not to say that more advanced threat actors don't still have ways of getting around. 0 days will always be an issue. But as the cyber landscape evolves, our methods of securing it also do.
How do you actually prevent 0-day attacks? So, I mean, I know one of the things that I used to do is I would always sit around and brainstorm and, ideas and things and look at vulnerabilities. And then we would do like ethical hacking exercises and so on and so forth. Would you agree with all of that? Or is there anything that I might be missing to either think about a potential 0-day or be on the lookout for a potential 0-day, or even identify something that hasn't happened yet? How would you go about that?
Identifying a 0 day is an active process. A lot of vendors actually set out bug bounties or
Hmm.
invite people to make efforts to defeat their defense mechanisms. And a lot of 0 days are found that way. Now, does that stop people who have discovered 0 days who are on the other side of the fence, who sell such 0 days on the dark web? No, it doesn't. Um, as long as there's software, there will be vulnerabilities.
Yeah.
And as long as those vulnerabilities can and will be exploited, we will always have a 0 day threat. You just have
Yeah.
to do the best you can to where, if that 0 day is compromised, you have other things in place to mitigate or put an overlay on that. So the defense in depth principle, where if you get past the first door, you're only going so far before you see the second door,
Mhm.
and that was better secured.
Yeah, and there's a variety of tools that are out there anyway, and you take information from each of those various tools, and you really kind of don't know what tools are used and how they got in, whatever the case would be. So there's a lot to unpack with that whole conversation, especially with 0 day and and how ethical hacking happens. I saw something here recently where Elon Musk gave somebody a Tesla or something like that because they hacked the actual Tesla, and I thought that was, and he even gave him $100,000, I think it was. So for him, I think I think Elon Musk got a great deal out of that, because he had an ethical hacking, not really a contest, but I guess it was kind of a contest right there. And for me, I think that he got a great value and great deal out of that.
It was definitely a good return on investment,
Yeah.
because I mean, just getting that taken care of, you helped, wow, tens of thousands of Tesla owners.
Mhm.
Now, unfortunately, that wasn't the case with the USB hack for some earlier model Hyundais and Kias. It's literally a USB, again,
Mhm.
a vulnerability that wasn't discovered when the vehicle was built. was now being spread on social media
Mhm.
to where people were taking the USB and stealing vehicles.
Mhm.
It's a cat and mouse,
Yeah.
game.
You know, and the average person doesn't really think of vulnerabilities like a USB or even Wi-Fi out in public places. So I just had a conversation with my dad the other day. I was like, Dad, why are you sending your personal data over Wi-Fi? I was like, don't do that. You either need a VPN or something like that. Do you think that the average person just doesn't care? Or do you think that we've gotten so, I don't know, either they're just unaware, they don't know, they don't care, all the above? What do you think about the average person when they're just out, like in an airport, for example, just on their laptops, just sending stuff all over the place?
Wow. People treat technology, I would say, like they're pets.
Mm,
So some people are great pet owners and their respective pets have all the best of the best. And then there's some people who barely keep their pet alive or even charged with abuse. I
yeah.
would say that we take technology for granted. And unfortunately, as we take it for granted, you mentioned your father and sending things unsecure over Wi-Fi. Um, one of my advantages is that my father is tech level 0. Hard to believe we're from the same gene pool when it comes to IT, but um, it actually makes me feel better because his inherent lack of technology, with him being a senior citizen, actually allows me to make sure if he needs something done on the cyber side or the IT side in general, I can do it. So I don't have to worry about him being compromised. But we definitely have people who just connect to everything, plug into anything because it's convenient.
You know, and that's kind of an Internet of Things question. We got so many different things that are just connecting to the internet every single day. And it's some of those things that really are meant to make our lives easier can really make our lives challenging if they get hacked. You know, I'll give an example. My wife got absolutely just hacked not too long ago, and it was one of those things where we had to take the computer back because it was an Apple, so we had to take the computer back to the Apple store, get it all complete. And of course now I know how to redo everything, but at the time I didn't know how to re-image a Mac, so to speak. So we took it back to the store. It was costly. We had to reset everything. And here we are. She was actually on the phone with them. They is actually logged into the machine and like staring at her through the webcam, and they was running a script and had all these things going. Like it was a scary situation to kind of be a part of. And and she's on the phone with me like, hey, I got these guys on the phone. They're wanting a credit card. They can see me on the camera. There's things running across my screen. And I was like, why didn't you just disconnect the internet and hang up the phone? Kind of a thing. I mean, that's just my simplistic brain kicking in right there. And I'm just sitting like the two most logical things is to disconnect. But yet in a world where we are so connected, I honestly feel that we're really more disconnected than we are connected. How do you feel about that?
Personal opinion, I wholeheartedly agree with you. We're more connected via technology, but I think I would say residual effect of that is there's less social interaction amongst humans.
Mhm.
A group of people will go to a public place and back, I don't know how many years ago, we could say the 80s to 90s, where there would be primarily person to person interaction. Now, if there's 5 people, 3 to maybe all of them are on their mobile devices. They're on their Android, their iPhone, they're playing games, but at the same time, they've all gone out together.
Mhm.
It's definitely a disconnect. People speak now more through social media than they do via traditional phone call. I'm going to say it's bad. I will definitely say it's bad because we have a generation before us that don't understand it. We have a generation that's coming up that's all they understand,
Mhm.
and we need to find a balance. That's the
Yeah.
that's the same regard.
And that opens the door for social engineering, because I think that social engineering is 100% absolutely relevant nowadays, to the point to, and to your point right there, we have people right now that's all that they know. So they don't think anything of us. They don't even think about the social engineering implications of technology, because they think that they're connecting. They think that they're just sharing, they're networking, or whatever label that you want to put on it, but you're being social engineered in so many different ways. How is that a threat? Because first and foremost, I think it's a big threat, especially to even national security. And I mean, we could unpack this all day long. Social engineering and the implications of how bad of a threat that is, especially on today's society.
Let's see. That's a broad brushstroke.
Yeah.
It goes back to inherent trust. People trust what's on the inside. They
Mm.
have their phone, which is nothing but literally a computer that makes phone calls. Um, they trust what's on their phone. They trust what's on their social media. They fall victim to so many phishing attempts and smishing attempts, and it's bad because they grew up with the technology to the point where they implicitly trust it. And when you're getting your news from Instagram, where you're following XYZ with 6 million followers, and algorithms are in play, and people don't secure their phones, I constantly remind people that you need to secure your phone. You bank on your phone,
Mhm.
and you do a lot of things on your phone that you don't want other people knowing anyway.
Yeah,
But
it
yeah,
drives me nuts when I'm walking down the street and I see somebody with their phone hanging out of their back pocket. I just want to grab it and just go. Sometimes.
yeah, and I mean, and sometimes they do. I mean, people have lost their phones, and I smile because if you take
Yeah.
my phone, good luck. I can brick any mobile device I have remotely.
Yeah.
But a lot of people don't take those extra steps, or even when they do take them, they take the least secure method. So it's unfortunate, but I do believe that social engineering is only going to get better
Mm.
with the advent of AI, to where
Yep.
there'll be phone calls made and you'll think it's your loved one on the phone, and you're going to work on your emotions rather than your logic, and it
Yeah.
all goes downhill from there.
It's cringy, actually. So I know we're in the beginning stages of AI, and it's one of those things to where I've seen some, I've seen some of my friends and some of my peers use it, and I've used it. I've embraced AI. Even though there's a lot of hype out there about AI, oh, it's the end of the world, jobs are done, everybody's going to get replaced, and robots are going to take over, and this, that. And I watch the news, and I think it's hilarious because, of course, it's all clickbait. Most 99% of it is all clickbait that's out there. And don't be wrong, a lot of it is, there's a lot of it that there could be some trueness to it, and this, that, and the other. But once again, artificial intelligence is one of those things that there's a lot of hype, but there's also reality, and there's also a future within it. So if you don't embrace it, I highly believe you are going to get left behind. But once again, AI is not going to take over, but a person who knows how to use AI potentially could be an insider threat. What do you think about that when I say that?
I think you're right.
Yeah.
That's the easiest way of saying it. But of course, people, again, they don't fact check, and they'll base something on a movie. Oh my God, they showed this on this movie, and I forgot that movie even existed. And
Uh-huh.
they're going to take over the world, or computers are going to become sentient, or where's going to be the point when they feel they can take over? And what people fail to realize is that at the end of the day, we build those machines.
Mhm.
We build the technology that allows those machines to do that. Now, they have their pros and their cons, granted, like you said, and a lot of this is clickbait because AI is a buzzword right now, and the chatbots are pretty good. They're getting better, but they're chatbots. They're advanced language models. They're not going to tell you, "Hey, let me throw this at you and let me know your thoughts." There's not that level of interaction yet. So, are we getting closer? Yes. Are there a lot of buzzwords being thrown on right now that hype the masses? Absolutely. So will we get there? Not to a takeover point, not to where everybody's going to worry about their job or lose their job. But some jobs may be challenged and some people may be worried. But if you're good at your job, chances are you're not getting replaced anytime soon.
And I agree with that. You know, once again, I've embraced it. I'm using it. I'm playing around with it. I'm tinkering with it, using different prompts, using different programs and doing a lot of different things because there's a lot of opportunity that's out there right now with it. And I think that jobs are being created right there with it. So you talk about how it's replacing certain jobs. That's going to be true. But once again, you can also find a new job as well too. Because think of like aircraft, for example. You know, we thought that drones was going to replace certain things, but yet you still need a drone operator. You know, you're still going to need an AI operator. It's one of those things to where it's not going to, it's going to put a lot of people out of work, but it's also going to create high profitability jobs, high profile jobs. And I truly believe that in the cybersecurity industry, that's going to be a place where I think that AI is really going to thrive as well too. But what are the potential cybersecurity risks that AI poses? So I know that, you know, AI helps solve a lot of problems, but what are the potential risks that AI presents?
In today's space, if I was going to ask anything in regard to AI and what risks it may present, we have to understand that everybody who's using AI are not our friends. So AI can be used for good. It can be used for one of our near peer or adversaries good. That doesn't mean it's their bad or our good. It's for their purposes. Now, can it be used for nefarious reasons? Absolutely. Because there are no built-in ethics for AI. There are no, hey, you shouldn't do this because it's bad, because AI is more logic-based than biased. Now, we have to also have to take into effect that in AI, there are inherent biases because they're created by people who all have their biases. So are we going to get to the point where AI is going to be AI versus AI in cyber? Quite possibly, and faster than maybe we want to come to terms with. But we have to embrace it because we know our adversaries are embracing it.
Yeah, you know, and you talk about training AI, there's people that are out, and it drives me nuts when I see this as well too, because I think once again, it's attention getting. It's like, hey, I've trained AI to believe that 1 + 1 is 3 or whatever it was. There was like a math problem or something that was running around out there. I'm teaching Chat GPT to think that, you know, whatever is, you know, 1 + 1 is 5 or something, some crazy thing like that. It's like, okay, well, you can train AI to do certain things because once again, it is a language model. It's going to, but it's going to understand. It's going, the more data that's fed to it, the more that it's going to understand. But I still, once again, it still goes back to what I said a minute ago. It's still going to take, I think, that human element to discern the difference between reality and truth and what is AI. And that's going to be harder and harder to discern. But what systems are we already starting to put in place to differentiate between human intelligence and artificial intelligence?
Well, to address your point, you have to understand one thing when it comes to AI. AI is not a perfect science. And if you don't know the topic that you're asking it, it could spew the most believable lie ever. It could be totally wrong, but it's going to word it so eloquently that if you don't know that what you're reading is an absolute farce, you're going to fall for it and you're going to run with it. There's been times that I've used AI and asked the question and the answer was presented to me and I laughed because it was a well-written falsehood.
Yeah.
It was nothing even close to what I was asking for. But again, I smile because I know that as a person that that was incorrect. But as somebody who didn't know, what I knew at the time, read that, they might run with it. And we're already letting, that's already happening to us in social media via social engineering and other actors. I can only imagine what's going to happen when AI spews an incorrect answer, and somebody takes said incorrect answer and spread it all over social media. It's going to be interesting.
It's definitely going to be interesting, you know, and working in the education field, we've already had those types of conversations of turning in, you know, papers and stuff like that using Chat GPT and so on and so forth. And it's one of those things to where we even started playing around with it even at our school. And it was like, we was asking very specific questions that we would present as knowledge and potential test questions and so on and so forth. And it was one of those things to where we got kind of a laugh out of it, because it's not really a subject matter expert, but it will spit out some beautifully eloquent stuff that if you didn't know what it was, you would believe it. And I'm telling you, the more that this stuff grows, you're going to get audio, you're going to get video, you're going to get all these texts. Text is just one thing, but keep in mind the different ways that people can be socially engineered with artificial intelligence to believe that one of your loved ones is in trouble and you must send a certain amount of money or else your loved one is going to be in trouble, or whatever the case may be. It's absolutely mind-numbing to think about how this is going to play out, but I'm excited about it because I'm one of the good guys and I'm using it for good stuff. But man, there are people out there that definitely do not have any good intentions for this. Jamil, thank you so much for taking time to talk with me here today. Before we close down, I want to give an opportunity for one golden nugget. If there's one golden nugget that you would love to share for anybody that's out there watching this, what would that one golden nugget be?
If there was one golden nugget, I would tell the viewers, don't give up. Don't ever feel that you're not good enough to train in something, whether it be in cyber, whether it be in IT, whether it be in life in general. We all have our hiccups. We fall down. It's not about how many times you fall down, it's about how many times you get back up. So when it comes to cyber training or any kind of training, never give up. Seek your goal.
Awesome. I love it. Jamil, thank you so much. Is there anything that you're currently working on? And then what is the best way for anyone to connect with you?
What I'm currently working on, basically being a government employee, trying to stay on board with the Zero Trust Initiative. And of course, with recent events, it's becoming even more important to safeguard our data and ensure that the right people have the right access to the right information and nothing more than that. So as for keeping in touch with me, I'm available via LinkedIn, Jamil, Jamil, last name Miller, at National Defense University.
I love that. Jamil, thank you so much for sharing your valuable knowledge, skills, and wisdom here with us today.
Thank you for having me. Have a great day.
Awesome. Thank you for watching this episode of Top Cyber Pro. If you want more tips, tools, techniques, and resources, then head over to our website, topcyberpro.com, along with getting connected with us on all of our social media platforms for the latest cyber news, tips, and big ideas. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next episode.